Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ginge and Pedro Show. I am, of course, Mr. Ginge Gingerton. Alongside me is nobody this week, but that's all right. We're sending, I don't. Pedro's just disappeared, actually, which is maybe an interesting theme for this episode, considering the topic we have, the movie Skinamarink, which does seem to have a lot of strange disappearances throughout. So maybe we can sort of segue into that. They have director Kyle Edward Ball hanging out in the background there. And yeah, so I guess we'll just go ahead and kick this thing off. I usually chit chat with Pedro, but I don't know how it goes. Okay, so without further ado, boom. Yo. Hey, Kyle.
Hello.
Thanks for coming, buddy. How you
Yeah,
doing?
for sure. Good, good. I just went to the grocery store.
All right. Up there in Edmonton, right?
Mhm.
Canada.
Yeah, it's Canada's Austin.
All righty. Very nice. I like it. Do y'all have cowboys out there? Is it like a more is it just the city or do
Yeah, so Cowboys, they're really only in the country, and Calgary, which is to the south of us, they do take on kind of the cowboy theme and aesthetic. And in Edmonton, we don't do that so much. And in theory, look down on Calgary for doing it. Although I'm
right?
visiting Calgary in June, so let's forget I even said that. So for Calgary Horror Con.
Very nice. Right on. Very good. Some cowboy horror couldn't be all that bad, maybe out there. I don't know. Bulls
Oh
running
yeah,
wild.
it looks like a really big slate. Like they just announced Courtney Jude, what's I don't know his full name. The guy who plays the current Michael Myers will be
Mhm.
there. Millie Shapiro from Hereditary, a bunch of the Attack of the Killer Clowns. It's almost like an Attack of the Killer Clowns kind of reunion, it looks like almost. And it looks like they'll be announcing more people coming up. So it looks like it's my first horror con, so I'm really excited.
Hmm. All right. Right on. Well, congratulations. Are you featured as a guest or you just
Yeah,
popping in to hang?
I'm featured as a guest.
Wow. Right on.
Mhm.
What's the because I definitely want to talk about the movie, but I also want to talk about your sort of business acumen, if I may, because what you've been able to do, just scaling the ladder like that and getting, I just would like to sort of talk about that. I'm a comic book guy, specifically like in the indie scene. So it's a lot of like having to do everything yourself and, just trying to learn from other creatives is a part of, what we do on this show. We usually have just comic book guys on, but, we're reaching out to, whoever really. So, um, so let's talk about your creative journey. What were your big influences growing up, and at what point did you decide, I want to make movies, or did you want to be a writer first, or
I decided I wanted to be a movie director when I was about 6 or 7 years old.
Mhm.
And my first introduction to I want to do horror movies was Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark? Then as I matured, I got into more advanced horror like The Shining.
Mhm.
And then when I was about 8 or 9, I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey for the first time, and that got me into more serious just cinema in general.
Mhm.
But horror was still always my baseline. I always went back to horror. And then in high school, I took video at Victoria School of Performing and Visual Arts, which is a public school in downtown Edmonton. Leslie Nielsen also graduated from there. And supposedly Tommy Chong, although
Mhm.
a lot of high schools in Alberta claim that Tommy Chong went there because there is actually weirdly some truth to that because apparently his family moved around a lot, so he did go to a lot of high schools in Alberta.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. And then I took a few years off, went to college, film school at the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology.
Mhm.
Then after college, Had a brief tryst with a music video director that I won't get into. Nothing really panned out from that. Then I dabbled with doing a few horror shorts. Those horror shorts didn't really go anywhere. Then one day I came up with the idea of recreating people's nightmares on YouTube. And I'm sure other people have thought of similar things before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could argue even to maybe greater success than I did. So I started my YouTube channel. It didn't really blow up at any point, but at some point at our peak pre-Skinamarink, we had about 1,400 subscribers, which for me, I was really happy with. Now, because of the attention of the movie, I think we're like at like, I don't know, 20,000 subs or something, but I haven't posted in like forever. So doing the YouTube channel, I learned some really valuable stuff. I learned what I was good at, what I was bad at, what people responded to, what they didn't. I learned just simple things of how to work with amateur actors and how to get what you want out of them. I also learned how to scare people with next to no money. So basically a camera and what I had around me, and also how to deal with community feedback, etc. Also, I learned, because people were commenting nightmares kind of by accident, I learned what scared people, right? And what subconsciously scared them, right? Because nightmares are interesting things. They're things that we come up with, but we're not consciously coming up with. So it's this weird kind of middle ground where we think of them, but we're not consciously creating them. It's just something that we're vaguely a party to. Hello, my cat just came in. So then when I was about 27, 28-ish, I said, okay, enough playing around. Maybe I should start seriously consider doing a feature. Let's do a proof of concept short first. So I had an idea that I was batting around for years, partially inspired by a common motif. Miles enough. Motif that people would comment on my YouTube channel. So from that, I got a little bit of money together and did a proof of concept short called Heck. Heck is different than the feature. The ideas explored in it are different, but kind of the general feeling is similar. To give you an idea, in Heck, there's no monster. It's just a kid in a house. Versus Skinamarink, there's very clearly a monster. Then I finished that, put it out into the world, didn't really get that big of a response from it, but I was really happy with how it turned out regardless. So decided to see if I could do a super micro budget feature. Then a pandemic happened, which actually kind of worked in my favor, because I was laid off and then brought back and then laid off again from my job. And being laid off was actually kind of a blessing in disguise, because I had time to sit down and sorry, just 30 seconds. My cat's freaking out.
No, absolutely no problem.
Miles.
Say hello to the chat real quick. Ichthus, what's up, brother? Thanks for coming by. Ashton Jackal, what's up, buddy? Two OGs themselves on my channel. Thanks for coming by, boys.
Sorry.
Oh, not at all.
I had my headphones on, so I couldn't hear you. I opened all the windows to kind of get a lot of air into the apartment. And whenever I do that, like a minute after, he gets all this energy because of the super oxygen blast. So
just getting
anyway,
high on life.
Yeah. I actually have two cats, Miles and Handsome. So nice. Then I started writing my script. I went into writing the script with the knowledge from my YouTube channel of how I could shoot things for next to nothing. So I thought I went in with, okay, A, do one location. B, shoot actors in your unique style that you've created on your YouTube channel where you don't really see actors that much and you can save on time working with actors. So basically, shoot a short film's worth of performance in a feature length movie and then imply everything else and do things like POV shots to get around this. So I already had the knowledge of like, this is how you keep things super, super cheap.
Mhm.
And then because I was so used to it, doing it on my YouTube channel for years, it just sort of flowed. And once I had those rules set in place, I was
Mhm.
able to work within that constructed sandbox and just go nuts. So I wrote the script
Mhm.
and then went into development and pre-production. My friends who are all kind of local filmmakers in Edmonton, but more in the kind of documentary space, because in Canada, documentary is king. That was Miles again. So in the documentary space, but still in the filmmaking community here,
Mhm.
they were able to help me with development. We applied for grants. We didn't get any of the grants, but we then used the materials we used for our grant application and transferred them to a crowdfund. We used the
Nice. Right.
crowdfund Seed and Spark, which is an excellent crowdfunding resource for filmmakers. As far as I'm
Mm.
concerned, if you're a filmmaker, the only crowdfunder you should use is Seed and Spark. They're filmmaker specific. They're amazing.
Nice. Very nice.
We were able to crowdfund our budget of 1,500 Canadian, no, 15,000 Canadian dollars.
Mhm.
And some of that was in kind. So as far as cash, I think all we raised was maybe 12,000 Canadian dollars. The rest was in kind.
Mhm.
So, for example, my producer had said he donated $500 worth of hard drives, air quote, to be used for the production. Stuff like that was considered
Mhm.
in kind. And then we finished up pre production. We shot listed like we pre planned everything and shot
Mhm.
listed and structured the movie so that we didn't leave anything to chance, so that we knew, okay, we only have 7 days to shoot. We're working with child actors, so we have to get these kids in and out, and we
Mhm.
can't improvise. We don't want to keep them on set for too long because they're children, right? So,
Mhm.
and then we just went to it and shot the movie over 7 days. The children were only on set for basically half a day, and the adult actors were on set for also basically half a day total.
Mhm.
It's fuzzy because the gentleman who plays the dad in the movie, Ross Paul, his son
Mhm.
plays Kevin Lucas Paul. So Lucas was on set for maybe a full day, but he was only on for really half a day, maybe 5 hours, 6 hours tops. And then
Mhm.
once he was wrapped, he could play on his iPad and do whatever while his dad was acting. Um,
Mhm.
Shot the movie, edited it for 5 months,
Mhm.
cut a
Wow.
really yeah, editing, and the thing was editing didn't go long for the normal reasons, so it wasn't like, oh, I was editing because I had all these problems or didn't have the right
Mhm.
footage or didn't have the right audio. I basically more or less had all the footage and audio I needed. It was
Mhm.
more just I got enveloped in editing and took my time with it and made sure it was right and
Mhm.
stuff like that. Took my time with the look, the sound, everything. There was
Mhm.
other stuff too, like towards the end with rough cutting and sending rough cuts back and forth. There was delays as far as getting people who had already read the script and knew the movie to come back and look at the rough cut, etc.
Mhm.
Before I finished the final cut, we had already sold the movie. So I posted the trailer, which is still more or less the current trailer that's used to promote the film,
Mhm.
to the r/slash filmmaker subreddit.
Mm.
From there, Jonathan Barkin at Mutiny Pictures had reached out to us to buy the movie. We sold it based on that. Then
Sweet.
yeah, I know, it was great, right? And he's an excellent um, executive producer. He's since left that company, and I believe is now with a company called VMI in Los Angeles. So by the way, Mutiny Pictures was purchased by a larger distributor called Bayview Entertainment. So now our
Right.
distributor is Bayview Entertainment.
Hmm.
And then within that, there's the secondary distributor, which is AMC Networks, which owns Shutter and IFC Midnight. And then we had submitted to some film festivals.
Hmm.
We got into Fantasia. Um, Getting into Fantasia felt like getting into Cannes. The way I'm describing this makes it seem like it was also easy. It really was not. From the
Mm.
time I started writing it to the time we got into Fantasia, there
Hmm.
was tons of stuff I had to deal with it. Tons of hardship I had to deal with it. I cried a lot, but for the
Mm.
sake of brevity, I'm skipping over all that. I cried the night, just by coincidence, I was crying the night before we got into Fantasia. Because so my
Oh, I was curious when I mentioned earlier the business acumen. This is kind of the stuff I was wanting to sort of get into without maybe getting to some stuff, maybe too personal. Could you talk
Mhm.
about some of the difficulties that you maybe had to navigate going through that pipeline, that like just the whole selling it, and like from was there difficulties there? Was that an easy process? Like what was some of the standout
Yeah.
troubles you had?
I would say we definitely had some luck with. I think objectively, I did cut a pretty good trailer, and I
You
was
did.
always told you want to get a distributor, you got to cut a really sick trailer that stands out. The
Mhm.
movie from the get go, too, does have a hook that kind of sells itself because it's
Mhm.
done in that 70s style kind of gimmick. Um, but there was still difficulty.
Mhm.
Um, for starters, my assistant director unfortunately passed away shortly after we wrapped filming. So
Yeah.
that was a hard thing too, because I would be editing and I would burst into tears because my deceased friend is like his voice is in the footage, right?
Mhm.
On top of that, there was also, once we got to rough cut and sending the rough cut to people involved with the movie, so producers, associate producers, they would reasonably take a while before they would watch the movie or get feedback. But this infuriated me in the moment because I was in my mind like, well, Josh would have watched it right away. Why don't you want to watch it? Right? Because in my
Mhm.
mind, Josh is perfect because he's my deceased friend who has no flaws, right? And
Right.
um then even going into distribution, there was a distributor we did not go with who
Mm.
had seen a rough cut and had a, in general, fairly cavalier attitude about the movie. He's kind of a shyster. I won't mention him by name, though. He's not involved with the movie in any way, shape, or form now.
Mhm.
Really, he was just someone we sent it to and he sent it back. But
Mhm.
that was annoying too, because in my mind, it's like, oh, Josh would have told me, oh, that guy's just an asshole. Don't worry about it, Kyle.
Mhm.
But he wasn't there. So anyways, we got into Fantasia, and
Mhm.
from there it was this upward trajectory There was dips, obviously, but it was a consistent like up, 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 up. So movie plays at Fantasia. We get our first handful of positive reviews.
Hmm.
And from there, it's this thing like shortly after Fantasia, we had submitted the film to Shudder, and Shudder fell in love with it right away and signed on the
Hmm.
dotted line for it. Yeah. And, the great thing about horror is horror history is littered with stories like this, right? People bring up Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity a lot because those movies had a similar thing: low budget, high concept,
Right.
big outcome. But you can even go as far back as of Romero's Night of the Living Dead was a similar story, right? Very
Hmm.
modest means to make a movie that's so different, and so different from the horror movies of the time, which were either monster movies or kind of the woman in the castle horror movies, right? Like,
Right.
and then he just threw cards against the wall and created something new with Night of the Living Dead. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I took some notes here, just some of my own thoughts based off of what I thought about the movie, but also some of the takes that other people had in breakdown videos. Because a lot of people, everybody's interpretation really does seem to be different. It's like nobody can really agree what seems to be really going on. Not that it's even in a bad thing at all. It's
Yeah,
it
that's
was a
that's
very
what I wanted
right.
from day one when I wrote the script. I wanted a movie like this where people, every copy of the movie is a personalized copy. So
Say hello to Shadow Hawk. What's up, buddy? Thanks for coming
hi,
by.
Shadowhawk.
Pops Van Zant. What's up, Pops? Alrighty. So let me read a couple of the. So there's a dream. People have said that maybe it's all a dream, but really a nightmare, or maybe a series of nightmares over a course of a few days. A hallucination, a demon, which there's obviously the entity, or the monster, the faceless man, or Kaylee, or that thing at the end of the movie, which really
Yeah.
actually
It's been interesting hearing just even the different names that people call the monster, right? Because people
right.
have called it uh the Skinamarink, the demon,
Hmm.
the entity. I use the shorthand of the monster.
Hmm.
Other people are even more concrete and say, oh, this is the mom, this is the dad, this
Hmm.
is Kaylee, right? And one person even said, oh, maybe this is just Kyle Edward Ball, which
Hmm.
which you could say is technically logically the most accurate, because I do it's heavily manipulated, obviously, but I am the voice of the monster in the movie. In
Oh
the
man.
original script, it's layered and there's two different tracks and obviously heavily manipulated.
Hmm.
So obviously I don't sound like that monster. In the original script, the monster is simply called the voice in the dark,
Hmm.
and that's it. So
Very spooky.
yeah.
Um, there's another one too, and it's sort of more of the like when I watch horror movies, I know horror has sort of a history of like a lot of subtextual stuff, but when I watch horror movies, maybe I'm just a Philistine. I've been coming to learn here, but I just typically take things at face value. But there's a
I
lot
I'm the
more,
same I'm the same way, cuz
right?
I'm all about feelings, right? Like
Hmm.
I'm all about feelings, and that's why I love David Lynch so much. People analyze his stuff so much, which is great. I don't want to step on their interpretation of cinema, but for
Hmm.
me movies are just about feelings. His movies, I just feel them. So,
Right. Yes, absolutely. And that's kind of like an interesting thing because there's a lot of, just more like real world emotion. And this maybe it'd be some spoilery stuff for anybody that's listening, but some of the elements, from the kid's point of view, there seems to be maybe a storyline of a divorce having gone on at best. And also, that's another thing that I noted, like all of these potential options of what's actually going on in this movie are all still really terrifying. right? Either if it is a
Yeah.
nightmare that's just, really scary and unsettling, if this kid's having hallucinations and he's tripping balls and, that's not fun. If it is a demon or a parallel universe or even a divorce, and I is that maybe I'm just sort of, I don't know if you could answer this necessarily, but the blood at the end of the movie where it looks like it's on the ceiling, but I suppose it's on the floor if the camera's flipped, is to me, my sort of like worst case scenario is, is there a murder that's gone on? Is the family breaking up so horrendously that it's just, if I can't have the kids, nobody can? Is that an element, or am I just insane?
I will say, so I don't want to confirm or deny anything, because I think, again, at the end of the day, the movie's not my movie anymore. It's your movie. It's the audience's movie. And if I were to say it's definitely this,
Mm-hmm.
that would spoil that. And I would never want to spoil that.
Absolutely.
I will say I did write things into the script with the intention of hinting at multiple outcomes, right? So, for example, when Kevin says maybe he went with mom, and then Kaylee says, I don't want to talk about mom, you could
Mm-hmm.
interpret that as she's upset because it's a divorce. You
Mm-hmm.
could interpret that as she's an older kid and more upset with the mom, as opposed to Kevin is more innocent at a younger age. You could also interpret it as she's just upset with the situation and angry at Kevin and says, I don't want to talk about mom. You could interpret it as the mother is maybe passed away. And all those options are true and all those options are false. And I would say your interpretation of, which I've heard a few people say this, it's a murder over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, because there's blood, someone is being hurt over and over again.
Right.
Um, but
Kevin
the
falls down the stairs, right? I mean, there's that
yeah,
element
yeah,
of it.
there are concrete things in it,
Mhm.
and the rest is so up to interpretation. One thing I will say is people have complained, some people who didn't like the movie have complained about, oh, we don't even see what's happening, it's just blood being splattered on the floor. And I
Mhm.
think, well, do you really want to see what's behind the corner? Because it's I think fairly certain that a child is being hurt to the point that there's blood. And it's like, do you want me to show a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old repeatedly killed or hurt or whatever's happening behind that corner? Is that what
Mhm.
you want to see? I don't know.
Right. I mean, it's a very, like I said, pretty much any of these outcomes really are a grim take on it. But for me, I did take it as more just because of the way the movie ends with that face. It does feel more like maybe a demonic type entity in the house. But there's definitely, this is one of the most, again, maybe I'm a Philistine, but definitely one of the most thought provoking, as they say, movies I've watched in probably a very long time. So,
You're not a Philistine at all. You know what's a Philistine is the people who say, "Oh, this movie is just hallways and ceilings." And clearly that's not the case.
mm,
And a Philistine wouldn't say be a Philistine would not be intrigued about this film or think it's thought provoking or interpret the movie in different ways or think about the movie or feel the movie in different ways. So clearly you're not remotely a Philistine. The Philistine is the person who says, I don't know why everyone's getting so excited about a movie that's just hallways. That's a Philistine.
right. Yeah, I feel you. There's the analog horror element. My best friend is, he is very particular about his horror. Doesn't like Paranormal Activity. And there's just that sort of, not that these are the same thing at all, but and I'm not even sure that this would be considered a found footage movie. Do you consider this a found footage movie?
You know what's interesting? one thing I never really remotely thought of it as a found footage movie. I I've obviously been heavily inspired by found footage,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of you could easily say that there's a lot, if you squint, a lot of the Blair Witch Project in this particular movie, not just found footage writ large, but the Blair Witch Project, there's a lot of that in this movie if you pay attention.
Hmm.
And it's one of my comfort movies, by the way.
Oh yeah,
And then and
I actually
weirdly
like the
enough,
sequel.
I I don't I've only seen the sequel once when I was a kid and it came out. I remember the main guy, the guy who like we see flashbacks, he's in the mental hospital and stuff. He was like one of my first crushes. But
I meant the 2016. I think that's the Book of Shadow.
Oh, yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of
I'm
people
talking.
forget
I
about it
guess
even.
I'm a Philistine. I'm talking about the literal sequel, The Book of Shadow, which apparently
Right.
even the director's like, I don't like that movie. But I will say it's been interesting seeing people call it as found footage. And when the movie played in Italy, all the reviews referred to it because their interpretation of found footage is maybe more amorphous and they use it more as a term of art than a literal, this movie is found footage.
Mhm.
And someone else brought up something interesting too. A few people have said it feels like found footage because it feels like a movie that's been found, that was
Mhm.
dusted off and like kept in an attic somewhere and someone pulled out, and I'm like, that's actually kind of the nail on the head too. Like it feels like a movie that someone found. And
Mhm.
then during the because the movie was leaked around Halloween of last year,
Mhm.
um it kind of literally was a found footage movie because all these people who didn't know that we had a deal with Shutter or anything, they thought, just look at this fucking balls to the wall movie, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the trailer is definitely, spooky. You threw that thing together very well, as they say.
Thank you. I took my time.
So, could you talk a bit about your editing process? Did you learn how to? Could you talk about film school actually? Because you mentioned micro budget, and that's one
Yeah.
thing I hear that a lot. And we had another director on a couple weeks ago, the Harbinger, Andy Mitten, and he
Oh,
also.
neat. Yeah. I think their movie may have been a part of the same leak. Because I think they also played at the same. I don't want to say the name of the festival because I don't want the film festival to be blamed because it wasn't their fault. And
Right.
but I think the Harbinger was even quoted in a news article after the leak in Spain, and said uh, the two movies they may have named explicitly were The Harbinger and Skinamarink. So,
Hey,
yeah.
yes, two good movies. Two,
Hmm.
it definitely is a good time for creative horror. And he also mentioned micro budget, and I keep seeing that word tossed around. And as an indie guy that you know pretty much has to do everything myself, and I think that's pretty much the case for most filmmakers, unless you've you know made it to some degree. But could you talk a little bit about some of the equipment choices, or what was some of the more micro budgety decisions you made throughout the
Yeah,
movie?
for sure. So some things are super micro budget and some things aren't. And over time, I learned, okay, this is the thing I'm going to invest in, and this is the thing I'm not.
Hmm.
So coming back to editing, before I took video in high school,
Hmm.
I had edited on the computer at home. Then I learned a little bit more when I went to high school video class. Then I kept editing. Then when I went to college, I learned a little bit more about video editing there. But I would say so I use the Adobe Creative Cloud for editing. So
Nice.
Premiere, and I like Creative Cloud. I can't do DaVinci just because the interface is so different than what I'm used to. And when I'm editing, I wanna be able to,
Hmm.
and learning a whole new interface. I do it.
Right.
Another thing I really like about Adobe Creative Cloud, and yes, it is an investment, and yes, for some filmmakers, it is a hardship to get the Adobe Creative Cloud. So, whatever tools you can pay for, or can get for free, or can get, do it,
Hmm.
right? But even when, and I'm not gonna lie, there have been times where, like, the Adobe Creative Cloud, paying for it was a hardship and I had to move money around to make it work. But what I
Hmm.
like about another thing too, during my Nightmare series leading up to editing Skinamarink, I had the shittiest computer imaginable for editing. Like, it was not even the minimum requirements for Creative Cloud. And then when we crowdfunded, I set $1,000 aside for the director's fee, and that
Hmm.
$1,000 just went to buying a nice gaming laptop, which I'm talking to you guys on now, and
Very
still isn't the
nice.
top of the line because you can tell that the webcam I'm on isn't amazing. But as far as the other specs, it's great, right? And when
Hmm.
you've
Hmm.
edited forever on a shit computer and then finally, like, oh, it was great. It was like, oh my God, you can just like
It's like a
edit,
new
right? And
car.
yeah, instead of waiting to like even look at the video, it was great. But I use Adobe Creative Cloud, and what I like about Adobe is it's not just a video editing program. It talks to Adobe Audition, it talks to Adobe
Hmm.
Photoshop, it talks to Adobe After Effects, it talks to Adobe Media Encoder, and all those programs you can decide to do pro in all of them, or Adobe Premiere Pro is proficient enough in those other things that it works by itself. And if you really need to, you can say, I don't know if I can clean up the audio well enough in a Premiere Pro. Let's export it to Audition and then bring it back. Or this effect
Hmm.
isn't going to work with the list of pre selected effects that Adobe Premiere Pro has. Let's bring it to After Effects and then bring it back. And that's all the tech stuff. And the great thing about having a nice-ish computer and a good editing program is they work well enough that you can just be an artist about it, right? And choose,
Hmm.
how long do I keep this cut? What audio do I put here, etc.
Yes. And so going forward, or do you think you'll continue editing, just being your own editor? I know that's,
I
sometimes.
really, really want to. I
Mhm.
was talking with this other director, and she was working with an editor who's just the editor, and I asked her, okay, so how does that work, right? Because I can't imagine being like, edit, goodbye, right? And she's
Mhm.
like, it is actually very involved. I do sit down with them and talk and go back and forth. It is like it, and part of it is you have to find an editor that you really like.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying by any means a director who gives their movie to someone else to edit is a hack or anything. That's not the case, because I had to cede control a little bit to my director of photography, right?
Mhm.
Other directors, they're their own director of photography, right?
Mhm.
But me, I love editing so much, and I think I'm good at. I was always told in film school, the director, they need to see control to the editor because they're so biased and they remember, oh, this shot, I want to keep this shot. I don't want to take this shot out. And then they'll keep this shot in and the shot is shit. And
Mhm.
I think I'm pretty good at, this shot is shit. I know we took 5 hours to get it, but fuck it. There's a piece of audio in it that we had recorded of the kids in the original script where the kids
Mhm.
swear, and I wrote it well. I think we recorded it well. I think both the kids acted well. in it.
Hmm.
It took forever to get, because it's hard to get kids to swear on the spot, right? And it was also hard too because like they really could not stop laughing at it, right?
Right.
And then I got to editing and I'm like, I don't I don't think this works the same. I don't like what inspired me to write it. I don't like what inspired me to direct the kids to do it. I and I got rid of it.
Hmm.
So you can be a editor as a director if
Hmm.
you're unbiased enough and are able to throw something in the garbage for the sake of making a decent movie within reason, right?
Hmm.
The rough cut is 20 minutes longer.
Wow.
And there's not that much more in it. It's just longer. It's just, let's hold on this hallway for another 30 seconds because why not? And then gave it to someone and they said, I like this. It's great. Could use a haircut, Kyle. It really could use a haircut.
It's a
And
very polite
even
way to put it. I like that.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I had so one of our associate producers, and he was the associate producer because he donated $250 to the crowd fund. John
Hmm.
Kamech. He was like the best person to provide feedback. He provided detailed feedback that wasn't too soft, but wasn't too harsh. Because sometimes if someone's too harsh, you think, well, they're just straw manning the edit to prove a point, or they're
Hmm.
being intentionally too harsh. They're Simon Cowelling it because they think that's going to provide an excellent. Well, you gotta be harsh to get a good edit, and he was
Yeah.
the perfect. He was just honest, and here's what I like, here's what I don't like, here's what you should get a second opinion on, etc.
Right. That's sort of seems to be maybe one of the from afar, one of the things people think about producers in general is that they try to put their stamp on things, and people think maybe the same thing about editors in writing, where it's like, either in novels or comic books, there's always like seems to be this outside war of like trying to find somebody that's not just trying to put their stink on something. That's what people
Yeah.
think of producers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and producers also, it's how are we going to sell this? How are we going to get seats in the audience and make money off it?
Hmm.
But people will forget about it in a year. Um, because a movie that will make a lot of money versus a movie that's good versus a movie that will make a lot of money and is good versus a movie that most people who see it will love it but we'll forget about it in a year versus Skinamarink, which a movie is about 70-75% of the audience loves it,
Hmm.
and 25% of the audience within that 75% who loves it thinks it's a masterpiece and feels compelled to send the director fan art and like is a very different movie than a movie that 95% of the audience loves, right? So,
Hmm.
and some producers, in all sincerity, do want to make a good movie, but also need to think about how can we get our return on investment. And some producers maybe are just assholes, and some producers even have weird hangups, like directors and writers. Like I heard a story. I was in a meeting with a production company, and this guy told me this story about this producer who she had an issue with. She never wanted to see a woman cry on screen. And it's like why? And I'm sure she maybe had legitimate reasons for it, as far as, oh, it's so sexist, every movie have to have a woman crying in it? And it's like, that's sincere to her,
Hmm.
but like sometimes women cry, sometimes
Yeah.
men cry. I
Right.
might, Jesus, write that into a drama.
Right.
So, and other people have other weird hangups. And also, coming back to writers, another thing I found out, like in meeting other filmmakers, like real Hollywood filmmakers recently, is
Hmm.
a lot of writers have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because writers sometimes are incredibly disrespected in the Hollywood system in
Hmm.
comparison to directors. So directors are the bad boys, and like a little bit is directors will take a script and just be like,
Right,
right,
right.
whatever. And also like writers are just seen as the guy who writes it and sayonara, let's do whatever we want with it. So
Hmm.
there's lots of different things in collaboration.
All righty. Well, absolutely. And I appreciate you just sort of illuminating us on the magic of Hollywood, as they say. Could you?
I still know nothing. I'm still a complete outsider at the end of the day. I've been to Hollywood
Hmm.
once. I've been outside of Canada once, and it was
Hmm.
2 weeks ago for the Shutter premiere in Los Angeles, and that's it. So there's still tons I don't know, and there's still probably tons that even Hollywood insiders don't know, which is evidenced by some movies. So
I actually I think Skinamarink, it definitely feels like a very unique movie. It definitely feels like an art piece. I've watched it twice, and
thank
I think,
you.
yeah, man, I think it's going to be one of those movies that the more people watch it, just for those that do like it, the more they watch it, the more rewarding it's going to be. So over time, it'll be one of those movies you revisit, just as a
Yeah,
fan.
I hope so, because if you make a movie that maybe appeals to more people and maybe more people like,
Hmm.
you've maybe made a movie that you don't have the 20% of the people who see a movie become diehard fans, but like a Eraserhead. And it's very rare that you make a
Hmm.
movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once, where I swear, I can't imagine someone seeing that movie and not falling in love with it. Like when I saw that, I was like, oh, I see what the fuss is about. Everyone who
Hmm.
sees this movie has to be a 5 star. Like, come on. But even that movie, there's a tiny percentage of people who are like, fuck this fucking movie. Because that's the beauty of cinema and the beauty of
Hmm.
art, right? Or with comic books, right? It's the
Hmm.
same thing, right? So.
Yeah. Did you see Blonde?
I did, and okay, don't hate me, Twitter.
Right.
I kind of liked it. I kind of liked it. I know that movie was very controversial, and Twitter went
Hmm.
crazy fighting over it, and the discourse went crazy about it. Not a flawless movie by any means. There was a lot of things with it, particularly like the whole thing with their fucking dad. Who gives a shit, right? And I know that's kind of the crux of the movie. And here's the
Hmm.
thing: I'm very much a person where I'm like, okay, visually stunning and a great
Hmm.
central performance does not a good movie make. I'm usually that kind of person. But Blonde, I did like. I didn't love it, but I did like it quite a bit.
I
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I loved the movie myself. I didn't know anything about Marilyn Monroe going in, and I haven't. I mean, it didn't compel me to go read her Wikipedia or anything. And I kind of like the story that they told, and I don't necessarily hold it as truth, because maybe because
Yeah,
obviously.
I actually knew a fair amount to know that the movie did lie quite a bit. Like even
Hmm.
in little details, I'm like, clearly they didn't even try to be accurate. But like it's not like Marilyn's here and her feelings are going to be hurt. Like
Right.
that's maybe a callous thing to say. But yeah, I did enjoy it. Not a flawless film, but I don't think my movie's flawless either. So
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It definitely had a lot of, just a lot of controversy over it. But and I actually watched it. My best friend and I, we watched the Elvis movie, and then we watched Blonde.
liked that one too. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I also like the
Yeah,
Elvis movie, and I love the Johnny Cash movie as well, and even what's the Great Gatsby. I really liked the newest Great
yeah.
Gatsby. I thought that was pretty good. Hmm.
Boz Lerman knows what he's doing. He knows how to make a Boz Lerman movie 100%. Right,
Right.
like so.
Okay, so Kyle, we're getting ready to wrap her up here. We're coming up on an hour, and that's a great segue here. So coming, Baz Luhrmann knowing how to make a Baz Luhrmann movie. What's next for Kyle? What do you got cooking?
So originally, before a movie got leaked, Shudder had planned to release the movie in the coveted Halloween 2023 release.
Oh,
And
man.
then the movie got pirated and they said, okay, Halloween, how about Friday the 13th, January, right?
Ooh,
So originally, I was planning on taking this time to start writing and thinking about my follow-up movie. But because the movie got bumped up, I'm still kind of in the soup of distributing the movie and promoting the movie, even now that it's on Shudder, as evidenced by this interview, right? So
right.
I haven't had time. And also there's other stuff too. Like I told a few people my ideas for follow-up movies, and sometimes when you tell people your ideas for movies, you just fall out of love with them. I do know that my next movie will be horror. I
Yeah.
do know that, and I don't think I'm ever not going to make a horror movie. I love it and want to keep making horror movies. I do know my next one's going to be horror. I do know my next one is definitely going to be some form of lo-fi, but I don't know what fi the low is going to be, so to speak, or how low the fi is going to be, but it will be some form of lo-fi. And the great thing, I've been incredibly lucky. I feel like the luckiest filmmaker on the planet right now. I don't think it's a stretch to say there have been periods over the past few months where I was, if you had to say objectively, who's the luckiest filmmaker on the planet, it was me.
Right.
Like when we had our screening in LA and David Lynch's people came with a box, I was like, oh my God, right? I have to be the luckiest person. But
they came with a box.
They came with it. He sent me a fucking box with a signed copy of Eraserhead and an Inland Empire shirt and a bunch of other shit. It was awesome. But
congratulations.
Thank you. But the great thing from all this is now Hollywood's come knocking, and I don't need to worry about getting money for movie number 2.
Right on. Absolutely.
So hopefully I'll have a horror. I don't think I'll have anything out in 2023. I think that's probably impossible. But hopefully I'll have my next movie out in 2024. Fingers crossed. So
alrighty. Dude,
yeah.
Good luck, man. And I'm really excited to see your journey. I love the movie, and I love that you're going forward. You said maybe
I just realized you changed your username to Ginge Marink for this.
Yeah, I always put it as something to just try to make somebody laugh, if only me. I've been saying the word skinamarink around my house for like 3 weeks. It's just
it
so
sticks
much fun
in your head, right? Like, and the Twitter names have been insane, like Skinema Twink and stuff. So,
oh God,
yeah.
Oh boy, yeah. Naming can be dangerous.
Yeah.
Okay, but no, but I am really excited to see where you go forward with your career and just pushing your stylistic journey. It's going to be interesting because just not necessarily to bring it back to my own writing, but just I've noticed I like to write a lot of short comic book like horror stuff, but it's lately the stuff's been very heavily influenced by other people, and I've been feeling the like the urge to scratch out of that and create something that's my own style.
That's good. Like everyone creates their own style as an artist, but the best artists always copy. You think Stanley Kubrick was created in a vacuum? You think John Carpenter was created in a vacuum? Don't pay homage, just copy. I copied a ton of people. Kubrick did the same. Sofia Coppola did the same. Like, just you can copy. Don't you can okay? I guess copy, steal. I don't know. And you can still have your own voice, right? No artist is made in a vacuum. So,
all right, some helpful words from Mr. Kyle Edward Ball. Kyle, I'm gonna bump you to the back real quick, buddy. Do you want to plug any Twitter or the movies on Amazon, Shutter, right?
Yeah,
Anywhere else?
the movie's available in all Shutter territories, so Canada, America, the United Kingdom, I believe Ireland as well, Australia, New Zealand, and also on video on demand in those territories. And we are still playing in a few theaters in
All
those
right.
areas too. We're also playing in theaters in Poland right now, and then Mexico, I believe, coming in March, and then France in May. So
Oh
we'll see.
man, very cool. Right
I
on.
know, right? Yeah, it's awesome.
Maybe take a trip down to Mexico for the
Yeah,
movie.
where it's advertised as Skinamarink Evil Awakens.
Very nice. Did you have a hand in that? Did you get the name, the ending,
You
or?
know, in foreign, because these foreign language distributors, they know their market best, so I've
Hmm.
tried to be hands off. Like in France, they're calling it The House parentheses Skinamarink, and I thought, oh, how many movies are called The House? Come on.
Interesting.
And then I thought, you know what? No, they know France much better than I know France. So whatever they want to rebrand it as, they can go ahead at.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty, very nice. I like it. All right, Kyle, let me bump you to the back, buddy. Appreciate you. Alrighty, viewers, thank you guys for watching. Let me say goodbye to the chat real quick. Ictus, thank you for coming by, buddy. The Gator Man, appreciate you. Ash and Jackal, thank you for coming by, buddy. I see Shadowhawk, thank you, sir. Cheers to you. Little invisible drink. Of course, Pops, thank you, sir. I'll be back on the network next week. And again, a big special thank you to our guest, Kyle Edward Ball. You guys check out the movie. Yeah, I've got it on Amazon, on Shutter. I'm a big Shutter fan, so they do some good work out there. But okay, gang, we will catch y'all next week on the Ginge and Pedro show. Peace.